from Birmingham. And with us here, the Home Secretary, Jackie Smith, the former Deputy Prime Minister, Michael Heseltine, Charles Kennedy, leader of the Liberal Democrats when they had their best results for 81 years, Richard Lambert, Director General of the CBI, ex-editor of the Financial Times, and the journalist and broadcaster, Janet Street Porter. Welcome to the Great Hall of Birmingham University, and our audience here, as always, will be asking the questions. And at home, if you want to comment, you can, as always, comment. If you want to text us, 83981 is the number to text us on. CFAX page 155 will tell you what others are saying. If you're watching digitally, push the red button. And as ever, you can email us during the programme with your comments. Our first question tonight comes from Gail Marsh, please.
Was the Home Secretary sidestepped in Ian Blair's resignation decision?
Was the Home Secretary, sitting on my left, sidestepped in Ian Blair's resignation decision? Home Secretary?
Well, I mean, the first thing to say about Ian Blair, as I said today, is that I think actually he has done a very good job as Commissioner of Metropolitan Police, and not only in terms of the job he's done in London, but significantly with a national role as well, because the role the Metropolitan Commissioner has in addressing terrorism is as important on the streets of Birmingham as it is on the streets of London. The second point is, I think actually when you ask somebody, as we do with a Metropolitan Commissioner, to do a difficult and demanding job as an elected politician, you should give that person the support to do it. The third thing is, as Ian has made clear, it was, frankly, because the Mayor said on his first day as chair of the Metropolitan Police Authority that he didn't feel that he had confidence in Sir Ian, that Sir Ian took the decision to resign, which I accepted when he came to talk to me about it today.
Would you have chosen him for another term as Chief Police of the Met?
Well, I don't think Ian had ever suggested that he wanted to serve another term, but what is important when you are both choosing and when you're supporting somebody that you're asking to do a job like that is that actually, frankly, you keep party politics out of it. You are careful that the processes that are in place are followed carefully. You need to work alongside people, and frankly, you should put a bit of time and effort into that before you jump to judgment.
But you as Home Secretary then are powerless in the choice of who runs the biggest police force in Britain.
No, that's not the case. I've made clear today, given that Sir Ian has made the decision to resign, that I'm starting now the process to ensure that we get a new Metropolitan Commissioner, because as I have said, that is a role that is so important, one, for London, but two, for the country as a whole. And it's because that role is so important that I very much hope that we will not get ourselves into a situation where politicians of whatever colour feel that they need to prove themselves through taking action against somebody that we're asking to do that job. That's what I hope will happen when we move on to appoint the next person to carry out that difficult and demanding job, and who deserves the support, not only, I think, of the Home Secretary, but of other elected politicians with whom they have to work as well.
Michael Heseltine?
There's not a shred of evidence to suggest this is a political decision. The Conservatives have actually been calling for Sir Ian's resignation since he was criticised so roundly as the boss of the Metropolitan Police after the shooting in the de Menezes case. Since then, there has been headline after headline about the racial issues that have gone on in the Metropolitan Police recently. In today's Daily Mail, stories about contracts being given to friends of the Commissioner. But the fact of the matter is, let's be absolutely clear about this, Boris Johnson is elected by the people of London to be the Mayor. The Mayor has no confidence in the Commissioner and said so. That is the privilege of being elected Mayor. And if he doesn't have confidence, he is right to say it. And should he have confidence? Home Secretary, since you left your constituency, if that's where you came, in London, on average, there have been 3 gun crimes and 6 knife crimes in the last 3 hours. And you seriously telling me that that is not grounds for lack of confidence in the people responsible for running the policing of the Metropolitan Authority? The fact of the matter is, our police are hamstrung. They have got targets, they've got forms, they're kept in offices, and what we want is a quite different approach to clearing up crimes on Britain's streets. We have some of the worst prostitute problems, we have some of the worst drug problems, and we have a violence in our cities which is quite unacceptable. And I believe that one of the most important proposals the Conservative Party has put forward, adopted, I believe, by the Labour Party since, is that we're going to have elected chief bosses in our major police authorities, so that there is a local accountability, an identifiable chief constable, and I believe that the public will demand a far more zero-tolerance approach in our cities in dealing with crime.
So the Home Secretary should give up control over the appointment of police officers and it should be handed down locally. That's your view, is it?
To the people. Because the fact of the matter is, it was a Labour Home Secretary who resigned recently who said the Home Office is not fit for purpose.
Right.
And he's right.
Right. I'll agree with that, yes. While it's so hot in the memory, perhaps you better have a chance just to answer my President before I go to the other members of the panel.
First of all, Michael, you've thrown around a fair few allegations. I have to say I hope we're not going to expect people to resign from any public job simply because there's a story about them on the front of the Daily Mail. But let's be clear, there is a process in place for all of the allegations that you suggested, inquiries into concerns about the contract, an inquest going on about the terrible death of John Charles de Menezes. There is a process in place. The point is that actually, for whatever reason, the Mayor chose not to respect that process, and on his first day as chair of the Metropolitan Police Authority, to take the decision that he took.
Why couldn't Ian Blair say, I've got the backing of the Home Secretary, I was appointed by the Home Secretary, not by the Mayor of London, I'm going to stay here until, well until what?
Because when you're doing a job as difficult as we asked the Met to do, for example, in bringing down gun and knife crime, and actually...
All right, when you're doing a job as difficult as that,
sorry, and let me just be clear, gun crime, for example, is lower now than it was last year. There is a big problem with knife crime.
Can you finish the other sentence? When you've got a lot of responsibilities.
There is a big problem with knife crime, but frankly, the idea that our police alone can solve that, I think is wrong. They need politicians and the community standing alongside them. And in terms of getting out and about on the streets, it was Ian Blair, actually, who pioneered, with the support of the government, and it's now everywhere in this country, neighbourhood policing teams that actually get out and work alongside the community to solve those problems.
Was he right to allow himself to be pushed out? That's what I'm asking you.
Well, I don't believe that I suspect he didn't feel that he had an option. He made the decision that he made, and as I say, I accepted his decision today.
Okay. The man there in the grey shirt. Pull over, yes.
I'd just like to say that what Jackie Smith has just said really does highlight why the police fail in this country. You said about the police have to go through processes. These processes of filling out forms of bureaucracy are exactly the reason why the police can't get out onto the streets and fight crime. And today I think if you really wanted Ian Blair to remain in his job, you as Home Secretary have the power to keep him in his job. And you know, you've not answered the question that Mr. Dimbleby put to you, or what the lady in the audience put. You really have highlighted what is wrong with our police system, and can you change it for us as the government, or otherwise we will kick you out?
We'll come back to that key question you put about why the Home Secretary didn't insist he stayed in a moment. Richard Lambert.
When you think of the troubles that Sir Ian has had and his predecessors have had before him over time, you think this is an impossible job. And I actually think we ought to be asking whether the range of responsibilities that you've described, Home Secretary, are actually doable. I mean, he's responsible for a very large part of the National Police Force. He's responsible for anti-terror activity on a wide scale. He's in a deeply political place. He's always being harried by the Daily Mail and others. He's accountable to the Home Secretary, to the Metropolitan Police Authority, and we learned today he's also accountable to the Mayor off his own bat. What kind of job description is that? I think we ought to be sitting down and thinking, is this a possible job? And if not, could we design one which is actually manageable? He's not the first guy to have had trouble in this job.
He's the first one to resign for almost 100 years.
1918, I believe, but the others, yes, I think you're right.
Janet Street Porter.
Well, the reason why he resigned was that it wasn't down to the front page of the Daily Mail. It was the feeling on the streets of London. I mean, when Boris Johnson expressed how strongly he felt about it, he was only articulating what people in London feel. I mean, I live right in the centre of London, and quite frankly, what's gone on over the shooting in Stockwell, how that's been handled, it just beggars belief. And also to see, as Michael has said, day after day, knife crimes on the street of London, and Jackie comes up with community policing and people who've got no real powers, kind of second division people who are supposed to patrol the streets but they can't really arrest you, but they can write a lot of things down in notebooks. It doesn't really work. So yes, it's true that we're asking too much from one man. We're asking him to combat terrorism and deal with stuff on the streets as well, and deal with police forces around the country. It can't work. But I think that Boris Johnson was articulating something that is felt so powerfully in London that Ian Blair ultimately had to bite the bullet and go.
Jackie Smith.
Let me just, let's come back to this point about what is the most effective way to bring down knife crime. I share people's concern, which is why, as Home Secretary, I've made sure that Ian Blair and the Met had the search arches and wands in order to be able to deter people from carrying knives, that when they got arrested, they were much more likely to end up in court, that now they are much more likely to have long sentences. But in the end, if we think that we can depend on the police alone to solve that problem, I think we're wrong. And secondly, if we think that it's going to be easier to solve violent crime by criticising and removing our support from the senior police officers that we ask to do difficult jobs without actually having spent any period of time trying to work alongside somebody, well, I think we'll be letting down not just the police, but those people that we're asking them to serve as well. And I do believe we should free up the police. That's why I have proposed that we remove all but one target on the police. It's why last week I was clear that in all of the areas where there's knife crime, we'll remove the vast majority of forms and a large part of the crime recording that goes on. We are already doing that. But
I want to bring you back to what the young man up there said about Sir Ian Blair. If you believe all these things, did you A, try and persuade him to stay, and B, what does it say about your power as Home Secretary that you couldn't insist that he stayed?
Well, I don't think
Both questions.
When somebody comes and they say to you, I have decided that I want to offer my resignation, I don't think actually it would have been the right thing to do for the people of London or for his national responsibilities to somehow or another persuade him against what he had decided to do to stay. I don't think that would have been the right thing to do, which is why now my priority, and I hope that there is support from all those who have the best interests of London and policing at heart, is to make sure that we get a new Metropolitan Police Commissioner who can carry out that very important role. I simply hope that when that happens, that is somebody who politicians, as well as the community, feel that they can stand shoulder to shoulder beside in order to solve the serious problems that we're asking that person to do.
Charles Kennedy.
Personally, I think Sir Ian Blair's position had become, over a number of years in fact, increasingly untenable. So I think on that basis, and I'm not including incidentally today's Daily Mail story, I don't know all the details of that, but I think the other items that have been referred to, and others besides. Therefore, I think he took the inevitable decision today. I think that as this debate unfolds, there will be more about this resignation which has got to do with those other matters, rather than just the mayoral matter, the Boris Johnson issue in all of this.
What do you mean it'll be about the style of policing in London?
Oh, I think there'll be a wider debate about that. I think that's happening anyway, as a matter of fact. Whoever the chief of the Metropolitan Police happens to be, and now that there's a vacancy, it opens it up all the more. No bad thing. But no, I think also the other issues that have caused controversy over a period of time. But there is a second thing here. Now, I'm out of step with my own party. I was when I was leader of the party on this matter. But based on my experience years ago in America and looking elsewhere in Europe, I've always been in favour of directly elected mayors. I think it's a way of breathing life into democracy. However, this particular issue raises some very important considerations as well. You can't do that job as Chief of the Met if you're lacking the confidence now in what's a tripartite arrangement, the Home Secretary of the day and the Mayor of London. However, should the Mayor of London, and it appears to be the case, perhaps not without the absolute endorsement of the Metropolitan Police Authority itself, and certainly clearly not seeing eye to eye with the Home Secretary of the day, be able to pull the rug. I think that's something we've got to be very careful about in this country. Here we are sitting in Birmingham tonight. Now, one day, if this great city with its fantastic history and civic traditions, which we're sitting in, if it has a directly elected, powerful mayor of the type that you have in London, I'm not sure that person should just be able to hire and fire the senior police officer handling security and policing for this area just on a whim. I think it's got to be in check, and that check, I think, has been rather worryingly disturbed by the events of today.
Okay. The woman in blue there. There, yes. You with the necklace on, yes?
Oh, me, sorry.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say that the causes of gun crime are multifaceted, and you can't put the responsibility on either politicians or the police force to solve it. Gun crime happens because of poverty and poor housing and worklessness, and unless the government address those issues, we will continue to have rising gun crime in all of our major cities.
Right. Thank you very much. I want to get the man here. Let's try and keep this to the issue of Ian Blair, because we have many discussions on those other points. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think given that Boris Johnson is not a saint himself, he may have just succeeded in making more enemies for himself, and this may spell serious consequences for, his, performance as mayor.
Okay, and you, sir?
Leaving aside gun crime and knife crime, how much confidence can we have in an administration which fails to depart the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police after 2 years of catastrophic failures?
You think she should have sacked him?
I think so, yeah.
If Boris Johnson hadn't?
Definitely.
Did that ever occur to you?
Well, crime is down in London, notwithstanding the serious concerns that there are about knife crime. Neighbourhood policing is in place across London and was early.
You heard what Janet Street Porter said there about London.
In neighbourhood policing.
Well, Janet,
It's a sticking plaster. It's policing on the cheek.
No, neighbourhood policing. Janet, you're talking down the role of police community support officers, which I have to say where I live are extremely popular. Neighbourhood policing is actually about police officers out on the streets whose names you know, who you can actually get in touch with, who deal with the sorts of things that are worrying you and that and help to build confidence. That's a good thing, isn't it? Police officers out working alongside communities, free to actually do the things that local people are important and that think is important, and that's one of the areas that Sir Ian Blair led in the Met and is now everywhere in the country over the last few years.
I'll take one more point from the woman there in blue. You.
Just going on the man's point down
Yes.
the front, is by helping to get rid of Ian Blair, does Boris Johnson want to actually take over the Met as well as everything else in his office?
Michael Heseltine, what do you think
Yeah.
Boris Johnson's up to?
When the power of the mayor was defined, there was a shared responsibility between the mayor and the Home Office. And Boris Johnson wants to do the job the people of London elected him to do, quite rightly. But I think that the Home Secretary has made a rather curious point, that first of all this was a party political decision by the Conservatives, which I wholly reject. And yet when it came to her deciding whether or not to acquiesce in the dismissal or the resignation of Ian Blair, she gave in. Well, I have to say, Home Secretary, that if that is the sort of support you give to the people in positions of power when some party political act threatens them, I don't think it says much for the support you give to the people like the Metropolitan Commissioner.
We'll go on. A question from Roger Twinney, please. Roger Twinney.
I've recently retired. Would the panel advise me to deposit my savings with an Irish bank?
I've recently retired. Would the panel advise me to deposit my savings with an Irish bank in the context, of course, of money flooding across to Ireland after their guarantee of all deposits and flooding into Northern Rock and gold and B&B and all the rest of it? Richard Lambert, is that a sensible thing for Mr. Twinney to have done, and would you advise other people to do it?
I would never advise anybody to do anything with their money. I'll tell you what I do with my money. I leave it in the bank. I've got it in a good British bank. It's well managed, it's well capitalised, and it's going to stay there. And you know, I just can't be bothered to. Maybe I should spread it around. I'm not going to.
Why?
I think that we've got to have confidence in the system. And I tell you what I do think. I think that the decision made by the Irish to give a full guarantee to all their depositors was an outrage. I think if we think back of history, you go back to the 1930s, what turned the crash into the Depression was that politicians around the world put up trade barriers. They went in for economic nationalism. They said, you know, we'll protect ourselves and beggar my neighbour, we don't care. This is what the Irish did this week. And I'm a great fan of the Irish economy and of the Irish government. But I think it was a really serious anti-European, unfriendly act.
Can I tease out of you exactly why a government saying we promise to redeem deposit accounts in our banks is such a wicked thing to have done?
It's because, well, first of all, the guarantee is equivalent, I think, roughly to 3 times the gross national product of the Irish Republic. So it's fairly kind of staggering. If you're a taxpayer in Ireland, you would be seriously, I would be seriously.
But doesn't it mean they won't go broke, those banks, because the government backs them, or does it mean they'll be take rash decisions because they know they're safe?
Well, certainly that. I mean, there are no impositions on the boards of these Irish banks to do anything at all, and they're not just protecting the depositors; they're protecting the bondholders and the shareholders. It's you could have said, you know, in the 1930s, you could say, well, America